I can't be in this conspiracy. I can't
I'm not
go
gonna lie
down
though,
this.
the technology exists.
It does, and
So it's
unfortunately, I
open
just gave them
source.
so many
Anyone who knows how to
ideas.
code could do it.
Yeah, just gave
So
them so many ide anyone who's listening to this, don't do it.
yeah.
Don't take our ideas. This is the bad stuff we're telling you about.
Yeah, don't do
Um,
those things. Hi, I'm Kat.
and I'm Gabe, and
And
we're
we're
the
the
ghouls
ghouls
next
next
door,
door.
talking about
Talking about
spooky stuff.
spooky stuff. You won't even know I have COVID right now. Look how
Don't even
nice
know.
the face
It's called
makeup.
performance, baby.
Yeah.
We're content creators. It's all about,
Mhm.
the what you're seeing on screen is different from what we're feeling inside. It's different
Then
from when we
different.
leave this room.
Yeah, it's different than reality. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's a performance.
Yes. Yeah. So we are the media literacy show from a horror lens where we explore the real life, historical, the societal reasonings behind our cinematic fears. And today, in our New Year, New Me series, we are talking about the film Cam.
Again,
Again,
you're welcome.
um, we covered Cam in our early days in our sex workers representation episode, and it is one of our most watched. Put quotations around that episode on YouTube. There's no video; it's just sound, and it's just because it has the word "sex" in it.
Yeah,
And
that
I'm
makes
about to
sense.
retire it because I'm like, no. Um,
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense for what I know about people. That,
yeah,
like,
the
that would
internet.
perform well. They're like, "Sex?
Sex workers. I
In
love those,
there?"
except
It's in the title.
when it talks about, them being regular humans and treating them with
Yeah.
respect. Can't have
And
that.
then they get in there, and then they're just like, "Oh,
Oh, no, this is educational.
yeah, this
I don't
isn't
wanna learn, I
it's
wanna
not
see
even sexy, there's
titties.
no people there, it's just voices."
Yeah,
Unless they're, like, into, like, ASMR or whatever, but
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
It was pre-video days, we covered Cam, which is about a cam girl. It's a horror story. It's great. It is definitely one of our favorite films, since it came
Yeah.
out, we were like, "Wow."
And it holds
And
up. Like, we watched it, I think, 2 years later, and it
mhm.
was still genuinely terrifying. It's still one of the scarier movies I've seen about, like, identity theft,
Yeah.
essentially. Ugh.
It felt really close to home. It's more now than when we first did it because we were very new. It was like episode, 23 or something. It
Yeah.
was an early app before we were really as tired content creators as we are.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't creating weekly content, we weren't making video content, we weren't trying to, keep up with the high demands of having people listen and watch you and, expect
Yeah.
certain things from you, or just, hadn't really established ourselves, haven't had, negative interactions with people yet or uncomfortable interactions with people yet. It was all just no
We're
one knew who we were yet. But I definitely think, we definitely had a respect for it the first time around.
agreed,
We
yeah.
talked to a friend about it who had, worked in sex work before. We talked about just other sex work horrors. That was really the core of that message, where this is gonna be more about, content creation and, your identity as a content creator, which we also covered, with Dory, for our, a Perfect Blue episode, so with
Mhm.
lovely Dory, that was, and I found a lot of similarities, and, the
Yeah.
same fear and discomfort that I had was stemmed directly from, how people interact with her, not so much, her job, what she did.
Yeah.
There's no problem with that. The problem is everybody
How
else.
everyone views it and, like, this kinda stigmatization, as well as just, like, when you live in a consumeristic society, people feel very entitled to
Mhm.
human bodies, especially if you're famous or a content creator or someone who is a sex worker. Like, they're like, "Commodification, check. We
Mhm.
got you
Yeah.
100%."
You belong to me.
Yeah.
And that's that. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, there's so every time I felt like I was like, "Okay, that's scary." And then the next thing would happen, I'd be like, "No, that's scary." And
Yeah, that's
and it was like,
so
of course, that also is a problem. It just kept building up, and there was just all these different, like, even just outside of, like, there are some supernatural things that are happening, even just taking a
mhm.
step away from that, like, that wasn't even the scary part. It was, like, everything else. It was stuff
Yeah.
that, like, very honestly could happen. Like, those are the things that were scary, like.
Yeah, the real stuff, like, not even the supernatural,
Mhm. Yeah.
very much like, oh, you see someone you don't wanna be seeing in a party store, and you know that they saw you, and why do they know where you are?
Mhm.
And all
Yeah, because
lots
like,
of stranger danger.
that's that me, right? This is me, this me. That person should not know this me. They should know that
Yeah,
me only. So now they're
exactly.
bridging that, like, where you're supposed to be siloed, right? You're supposed to be in this other section, not supposed to talk to me. Like, there are times when weird places and people recognize us as ghouls and it's nice.
Mhm.
Like, "Oh, aren't you a ghoul?" Like, that's wonderful. It's also still kinda weird where it's just like, did you recognize me from my voice, from, like, our face on the, like, that's always still weird because 'cause we're definitely not famous enough for that to happen frequently enough for us to be like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
another one
I'm
of these."
I'm also just way too nervous spicy for a stranger to come up to me and me not immediately be like, "Threat,
Yeah.
threat, what's happening? Who are you? I don't know you. I don't know anyone. I've never existed before. I do not wish to be perceived." So
Yeah.
I immediately go into like, "We are not safe. Everyone run."
Yeah.
Um, so if anyone does run into us in public
So we apologize.
and I look as if I am terrified you're going to murder me, it's not because I actually I don't know. It's just I don't know how to people.
And then it's also like, there's also this, like, as a content creator, people spend all this time with you, but it's a
Mhm.
one way, right? Like, where
Yeah.
they are experiencing you, but you don't know who they are. Right? So they
Mhm.
learn you, they learn about you, they have this connection to you, they have memories with
But you
you
get to
that
be able to
you do
do
not have. So when
yeah.
they approach you, they're coming with all of this background, this knowledge, and you're just like, stranger.
Yeah.
Stranger, which is totally valid. And I think that really comes with it too. Like, there are, I feel very connected to a lot of podcasts that I listen to. Like,
Yeah.
if I met them in real life, I'd be like, oh my God, like, remember when we went through that awful breakup and it was just
And you
me
were the one
using me as a
thing that made
coping
me
mechanism?
okay, yeah.
Exactly. And so
And they're
they're
like,
like,
"No, please go away."
yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting too, because I was just I saw this video with Penn Badgley from You, and we're
Mhm.
gonna be covering You again next month. But he had this video with him, and I'm totally blanking on her name now, but she played Love. And
Mhm.
she's an amazing actress. I hate that I forgot her name. But they were talking about just like when people approach them and like how immediately their mood changes sometimes, like when they're just out living their
Yeah.
life and people are like, "Oh my god." And they make this whole thing and it's just like, yeah, of course." Like, and you can't be like any other way, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, because then they're like, "We
there's
made
an
you,"
expectation. Yeah.
uh,
And so it just
"without us, you
immediately
wouldn't," which
dampens
is
it.
true, but it's also, like, very stressful.
Yeah. They're still a
Yeah,
person, but it just
yeah.
completely like ruins their mood and makes them feel just like a commodity, right? Like,
Mhm.
they're not a person. People aren't respecting their space. And so I was like, again, we're not like super like out there, but there are times when like I interact with people who think that they have certain like relationships with me or just like things like that where I'm like, I don't know you. Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason, like, what is that? Like, who is this? And I mean, we've even had some like pretty uncomfortable experiences on Ghouls of just like comments or fans or people just like blur the line and we're like, No." Like,
Yeah.
we're thankful for like the few fans we have. Don't ruin this.
Yeah. We're thankful and also we're also still people. So,
Yeah. Respect. That's really
enjoy the
it.
content. We actively try to make it good. We've already doomed ourselves though, Gabe, because part of my thing is that you're not supposed to use your real name when you're, like, a creator,
Hmm.
and we do, so
We do.
oh well.
It's like the Ghoul Gabe, That's how it is.
Mhm.
Which is, it just some people use their name, but they'll have like things a part of it, you know?
Yeah. No,
We
that's
don't
real.
have our whole government out here.
Yeah, they don't have our government names. That's very valid. And they don't
Exactly.
need to.
No.
We don't exist.
Yeah, we are secret. So let me tell you about the film, which is what you're here to listen to.
Yes.
Is Cam? It is from 2018, which is not that long ago. We watched it like immediately, and now we're like in love. So, it is about Alice, an ambitious cam girl, wakes up one day to discover she's been replaced on her show with an exact replica of herself. It's directed by Daniel Goldhaber and written by Issa Mazai, Daniel Goldhaber, and Isabel Link Levy. And Issa Mazai, it was her story mostly, and then like she's
Mhm.
had help with the others. And so I'll talk a bit about kind of her contributions and why this film would not be what it is without her.
Mm.
Very honestly. So Cam is a really haunting film that gets increasingly more uncomfortable and terrifying in ways certain content creators and femme presenting people can feel at their core, which is why it was so horrifying. The film follows Cam girl Alice, a charming creator who specializes in intense but memorable experiences for her fans. She begins her shows playfully chatting with those in attendance, and she gives in to their requests, well paid for, as she spanks herself and coos at them. She's very like conversational, and I remember when we were watching it, I was just like, "That's a lot of work to like," because you're like talking to yourself because they're just chatting on the like stream, and so she just like has to. You're like, "Oh no, don't say that," or like, "What do you guys
Yeah.
want?" Like she's talking to herself, and then Kat was like, "That's just Twitch streaming."
It is, yeah, 'cause you're, like, supposed to talk back to them when they chat with you, and you're like, "I don't know."
Like, what am I doing? Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
but
is
you
one of
really
the
do have to talk to yourself, and then especially because with the after effect where, like, you pull clips and stuff or whatever,
Mhm.
you need that entertainment interactivity. You have to act like people are there even if they're not.
Yeah, because I mean, what people are like, if they wanted the video game, they would just have the video game. They're paying for
Mhm.
you
To
because
play
the
it,
way
yeah.
that you are experiencing it, the conversations that you're having, you have this like connection to them, definitely plays into the
Mhm.
accessibility of the experience and all of that. And so I agree. And I think like talking to ourselves is a big thing of why it was really hard to get into Twitch streaming. Like we have a
Mhm.
Twitch channel, you can definitely check it out. It's like been dead for a minute. And a few times we play and people do get like a kick out of it.
Yeah,
Usually it's one of us playing a horror game, me being like terrified, and people think that's hilarious.
yeah.
Um,
You are really fun to watch when you play Twitch.
so we could support our many ways that we've tried to stay relevant. And Alice is very good at it. She is such a natural, and just like it's Madeline Brewer from Handmaid's Tale, and she is so good. Like, she's an amazing actress. I've seen her in a lot of different things, and I don't think I've ever been disappointed. And she does such a remarkable job in this film. Same way she like stole our hearts in the show Handmaid's Tale. So Alice, her on-screen persona is Lola. And so Lola is performing, she like spanks herself, she's like giggling, and all is well until a new voice joins the chat demanding blood. Literally. Real uncomfortable, real fast. Caught slightly off guard, she quickly blocks him, only for him to rejoin as a new user. And he expresses that like she can't get rid of him. And there's this real fear that we see on her face. Like all of a sudden that like the the mask that she had on as Lola comes down, and she's, like, nervous, like, how easily it is that someone could just come in and derail her entire experience and her channel, like, this is hers, and this person just comes in here, and now it's his, and it's like, "What?" And so she gets really, really nervous, and, he insists on violence using a mixture of emojis and obscene language while the other attendees begin to join in, like, almost too quickly. They're like, "Oh, a knife," like, "Oh, violence, I didn't know that was on the table," and she's like, "Come on, guys." Like,
Yeah,
let's not, wish violence upon me, a real human being.
yeah.
Um, and so Alice searches her chest of toys. She has this whole like bin of fun and withdraws a knife. kind of saying like, "Is this what you want?" And then in a most intense opening scene, Alice slits her throat to the chorus of coin chimes. So they're paying all that money for
Yes.
her to kill herself. So she just does it, and you're like, "What? Are
This
we
is a
gonna
whole
cut?
movie. What do you mean?
We're gonna cut to someone? Does she die at the beginning? And this whole time it was Sixth Sense."
Yeah.
Um, that's not the case. And after a few stressful moments, Alice rises and pulls the like silicone, like blood drenched piece from her neck and smiles because it was all part of her experience. She likes to do crazy things. Turns out it was her idea, which I think is funny. So giddily, after the stream, she chats with one of her regulars, Tinker, and celebrates her rise in the camgirl charts, which is like her big goal. But she's also worrying slightly at the easy viciousness of her viewers, that they had so clearly wanted to see her blood and just so easily. Like,
Yeah.
because she's like, oh yeah, like I won. Like she's feeling strong, but then she's also like, what was that? Like we
Yeah.
planted that, and she was wholeheartedly expecting people to be uncomfortable, and they were like, yeah.
They're like, heck yeah, kill.
But I
Which
mean,
is like
internet separates us from
for
yeah,
accountability and
accountability and
reality as
reality.
well. Mhm.
Yeah. Ooh, we said that at the same time. And so we're led to believe these are viewers that spend frequent nights with her. And so it's like really weird that they were so
Yeah.
eager for
So
her blood.
down. Yeah.
There's a few people who are new, and that's kind of like comes through. There's a lot of like girls pining for certain attention because of money, because that's how they need the money. This is their job.
Yeah.
Um, it's a service industry,
Yeah.
period. So we learned quite a lot about Alice in the beginning. She is a playful cam girl who enjoys creating fun new experiences with her fans. She keeps a calendar of all the different things that she's tried, and it's a mix of just like hanging out in certain ways, but she's just makes herself like a pleasant person that is yours. Like,
Yeah.
like, come hang out with me. We're best friends. And we're gonna do this crazy fun thing. And then also she's gonna get off. So it's fun.
Yeah.
She's anxious to break the top 50 charts. That's like her big goal. She's close to her mother and younger brother, the latter of which knows of her escapades. And she is waiting to get to the top of the charts before letting her mother know, hoping that she would be proud of her. And
Yeah.
she separates her life from her profession in that way.
Mhm.
But it's not out of like shame. I want that to be very clear. And that's one of my favorite parts, and I will get there. She doesn't tell her fans that she loves them, and she never fakes an orgasm. She has these clear rules that she follows to in order to kind of keep her brand, right? And her desperation for the top of the chart peaks after a close call during a dinner date with her fans. They break the top 50, only for her to fall rapidly down as another creator taunts the fans to watch her instead.
Yeah.
Because this other creator, Princess X, is adamantly never nude, only offering to remove clothing for every 10 spots that Lola drops. And writer Issa Mazai explained her idea of Alice as wanting to express the anxiety around my own digital identity, and I was depriving my personal validation from my performance and from my digital persona's validation. It was this constant anxiety of, do my viewers like me? Do they just like the persona I've created? And also, how much of my persona is real?
Mm.
Because writer Mazai was formerly a sex worker, so
Mm.
all of these are her life. And so, well, minus the scary.
Yeah.
um, in an act of desperation, Alice agrees to do this like duo show, this combination show with a fellow creator, and this time astride the Vibratron, which is rumored to do irreparable damage to her clitoris. And even despite the many warnings from friends and competitors alike, she endures, even breaking a precious rule in the process and fakes an orgasm so it'll stop.
Yeah.
And she finally breaks it. She breaks the 50 and like rises up because of this experience, because people are already fans of her. They see her do this.
Mhm.
That's how desperate she is. The morning after her hard-won success, she hears strange sounds from her camming room and finds that she's still climbing the charts. She then discovers that someone is using her name, her channel, and her face to perform. And Alice immediately calls the website, which is like Girls for Money or something. It was like
Yeah.
girls equal like purchasable good. Like it was like really
Yeah.
but they get no help. It's like really infuriating. It's anyone who's had to fight Instagram to get their account back
Yeah.
knows how aggravating that is. The film becomes
Yeah.
increasingly uncomfortable as she seeks justice, turning any which way she can for help, only to be denied, abused, and disrespected every time. There is no end to the horrors. Because, as Kat had mentioned, one of her viewers finds her IRL and a true
Mhm.
terror as he attempts to remove the barrier that she's placed, seeing her only as Lola, even calling her such in person. Like,
Yeah.
that is how, like, he, in our first episode that we did about this, our guest talked about that, like how sometimes they just see you as this person that you're putting on like display and they forget that that's not you. So
Mhm.
they're expecting you to be that all the time. And they're
Yeah.
also expecting whatever relationship you're building up in that space to extend outside of that space,
Yeah. Which
which
isn't the case.
that's not the case, and that's terrifying, and she's very like, she tries to be very stern with him and is
Mhm.
just like, "This is not okay. You are crossing bound," like, she's very stern, just like,
Yeah.
"You
And
know what you're
direct, which
doing
is
is
good.
wrong." Yeah,
Yeah.
and, he's just like, "I love you, blah, blah, blah."
Yes.
It's stressful, it's stressful.
Yeah, very stressed.
Um, and then, the fake Lola is rising in the charts very very well, like very quickly, and she starts with similar content before completely disregarding Alice's rules, including telling her fans that she loves him.
Mhm.
She also has an on-camera suicide, but this time with a fun twist of a gun.
Yeah.
And Alice looks on in horror at her own death on camera, completely shook by the experience. Like it absolutely rattles her.
Yeah.
It's such an like it's a very tense moment in a way that like the opening like fake unaliving was a little tense because you're like, what? What's going on? Oh my god! And you were more afraid of like what they were saying. And this one, you're like, what are they going to do to her? Um,
Yeah.
because now
Well,
they have
also, yeah, like,
control.
because the first time was based in, like, this consent, it's her decision to do that, and then this is, like, a person who is not her, she is not giving consent to this, so it's more horrifying because you, like, don't know how it's happening.
Yeah.
Could, like I know it's happening on screen, that person looks like me, is that gonna happen to me in real life? Like, there's a lot at play, I think,
You
that
also
makes
have,
it
like
really
you're
scary.
seeing yourself
Mhm.
do that. Like
Yeah.
and it's not you. Like, that's so like, I can't imagine. And so
Yeah.
she's absolutely, like, oof, really
Mhm.
messes her up. And fake Lola also, goes to a public place, the library, to perform, which is not something that she ever did. Lola always stayed in her room.
Mhm.
And, it is this stream that Alice's younger brother's friends find online. They actually find it on a different website where someone had ripped the video and
Mhm.
re-uploaded it, which is theft.
Yeah.
So on top of the theft, which and that sign was that's website was like cash for girls or
Yeah, something
girls
additionally,
money.
like
Yeah, like we own these bodies.
yeah.
And so her brother's friends find this video and they're watching it at his birthday party, and then eventually they call her terrible names and accuse her of being terrible and all this other stuff. Yeah, his birthday, like clearly.
Yeah, clearly these aren't his real friends. Because, like, why would you think that would be, like, a good birthday thing to do?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they're
Or
also
a thing
2
to do in
boys.
general,
And it's
but
also
yeah.
like society told them that she doesn't matter because she does this, right? Because he
Yeah.
knew that she did it, and he was fine with it.
He was
And
supportive,
again,
yeah.
she wasn't, like, afraid to tell her mom, she was waiting to tell her mom. So there's, like it's like, they didn't have that skewed way of looking at her in that way. So, it's very clearly just, like, they grew up thinking
Society, yeah.
she's now oh, this is a bad thing, and he's just like, how dare you. And it ruins his birthday obviously and reveals Alice's occupation to her mother before she was ready.
Yeah.
Eventually the website doesn't even acknowledge her identity when she's trying to call it. She calls the police to find them, and unsurprisingly they're unhelpful and also unsurprisingly predatory.
Yep.
Super gross, awful time. One of the officers makes foul comments about her work, asking her like essentially like asking her if she'd be open to doing it. Not
Yeah.
understanding that like sex work has many different like parts to it. And also
Mhm.
this is not the time. I am not Lola. Like, I'm Alice asking for help from authorities, like, super gross. And then the other one dismisses her completely, saying, "Stay off the internet."
Yeah.
Because to him, he's like, "You put yourself on the internet, it's your fault. You don't deserve anything."
Mhm.
So, she suffers from invasion of property, her personal world crumbling around her. And fake Lola even goes as far as leaving the camming room and going into Alice's real room, which is
Mhm.
one of the more horrifying parts for Alice. Like, you can see how upset she is that there's this such intense invasion of property, like of privacy, where they're
Mhm.
coming in. Like, she's saying, like, "Stay out, like, don't come in here," and just sobbing, pleading with them to leave her space. Because now it's
Mhm.
like, that again, that was Lola, this is Alice, and now you're in Alice's space. And then she
Mhm.
goes even farther by showing the fans photos of her life, including one of her younger brother.
Yeah.
Wh It's so horrible.
Mhm.
And even outside of the supernatural, the film boasts some truly uncomfortable and horrifying things. So, one of the cam girls that, mentioned previously, Princess X, who is never nude. In one of the scenes, she complains at the insistence of her viewers to disrobe because there's this blatant disrespect at her rules, and it shows how they see her as an object and not a human.
Yeah.
The house in which all the girls live, like, it was like the cam hotel or something. It was like clearly a place where they, all stayed and were able to support each other. Um,
Mhm.
but the fact that all of them knew about the horrors of the Vibratron, like
Mhm.
they were like, this is horrible. The website she cams for is titled something like Money for Girls, and her videos can be found on other sites after being stolen from her on things like Cash for Girls, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And as a content creator, the idea of having your account and your livelihood stolen and profited on by another is terrifying in and of itself. And to have your brand corrupted, your morals and rules undermined. Alice discovers that this supernatural being, the imposter, is a part of a bigger insidious scheme, one that has stolen the accounts of many camp girls. And turns out the number one cam girl is actually dead in reality and is
Mhm.
now at the top of the charts as this imposter, one of which has no limits, right? They
Mhm.
can stream all day. They have no rules and no boundaries, right? So they are set free. They could do whatever they want. And so they can keep giving the fans what they want. Because I think at one point she says, like, how do I stay up in the charts? Like, never sleep. And as a
Mhm.
content creator, burnout is very real. Like, people having to, like,
Yeah.
we are always burnt out. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we are weekly and we're just an hour of just us talking. I can't imagine the ones who do like these really intense, like highly
Elaborate.
edited
Yeah.
pieces. It's a big strain and there's a lot of pressure to
That's why a
complete.
lot like of people too like will have teams.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
have teams.
We don't have
Lots of
teams.
people
It's
don't have
tough.
teams, and people will assume people have teams that don't have teams. It's just like you and
Yeah.
your office.
Yeah, just me, sad. I
Yeah.
don't get to sleep anymore. And much of the themes covered in this film, as I said before, reminded me of Perfect Blue and Mima's struggles with identity and the commodification of her being, and how people thought they had any right to her as a being because she was on the screen.
Mhm.
However, I truly appreciated this film's approach to Alice and or Lola's claim to fame. Because while I was doing research for this episode, I was looking up other like OnlyFans horror stories. I was trying to look at like real ones,
Mhm.
or other horror films, maybe. And all of them were about these women needing to use OnlyFans or some other service because they're in dire straits. It was all
Mhm.
like the horror was that they had to turn to sex work to be able
Mm.
to pay their bills. Like, I couldn't, like, I kept trying to watch them and I would get like a minute in and they would establish that. And it would just be this like degradation of her on screen. And they're like, isn't this horrible? And I was like, you're totally missing, like you're discrediting and
Yeah.
belittling any of those content creators who do that as their job and that like are proud of that and like find strength in that in this um persona, as the writer said, right? Like, this is your person, like you're performing in any way that any other creator would do. And so to
Mhm.
say like, oh, look at like the horrors being someone just simply asking her to take off her clothes, and it's just like some people just do that and they do a really good job. Like,
Yeah, and, like, there's lots of people who, like, really love it, they get into it for fun, like, in
yeah,
addition to work, like, And painting it as it's only ever happens in these like dire straight situations definitely is gross.
Yeah, it takes the strength that like out of them. It just like it's belittling. Like I just think of any like
Yeah.
burlesque performer. Like they are amazingly talented. Like
Mhm.
though, and they're doing that, right? Like they're taking off their clothes, but it's absolutely a phenomenal work. It's hard work. They have to
Mhm.
choreograph. They have to put so much effort into their appearance, and it's like it is an art form. And the same thing, even just with any of the sex work, right? OnlyFans, all of those things. Like people have what they do, and it is
Mhm.
usually a point of pride. It's their job, and so just be like, oh, the last resort. And
Yeah.
they miss the point completely because what they should be commenting on is just like how gross those like the audience members of those people are. Like that's not the problem. It's just like look at this poor pathetic woman
Mhm.
who wants to get naked, not like look at these men who are demanding this clearly uncomfortable woman to do that.
Yeah.
Like yeah, anyway, uh getting off this soapbox for a minute because I could go for days. Like let's talk about society.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we don't value women anyway, or pay people enough that they would have to resort to something that they don't enjoy. Whatever.
Yeah.
Could go on forever, which is again why I've really, really enjoyed this film because in Cam, Alice is never ashamed of her work. Even her
Yeah.
hesitation in telling her mother isn't from a fear of disapproval, but because she wants to show her how good she is at it.
Yeah.
Later, after her mother is found out, we see that this was a realistic approach as her mother isn't ashamed or disappointed in her. Um, in fact, she explains she understands her and she sees the confidence that she exudes on camera, the beauty and pride that she feels. She says, I get this Alice, right? I get this Alice who's in her comfortable clothes and is quiet and reserved. And then I see that Alice and she's different, right? I see Lola who is confident and funny and charming. And it
Yeah.
was really like a point of appreciation. And that's exactly what Alice was like aiming for. And I was like, that's beautiful. Um, and she explains all like why she does what she does, and even
Mhm.
in the shadow of the fact that there's this imposter that's stealing her, like she's trying to like get her mom to understand that there was still a beauty in that moment. And
Mhm.
in the end, Alice figures out how to get her channel back, and in a rather clever play, Alice challenges Lola to a game, the winner of which will get the channel. And after some like really intense uh abuse, self-abuse
Yeah.
to kind of show how um unreal the new Lola is, she gets her channel back. She wins.
Yeah.
And she wins the fan, so she gets into her account, she logs in, and she shuts it down.
Yeah.
However, this is not the end because camming is exactly what Alice wants to do. So because they like shut it down, I was like, oh, like
Yeah. Like she's just not gonna
I
do it
thought she was just gonna
anymore.
go get I thought she was gonna cash out. I
Mhm.
was like, "Get in there and cash out right now. Send it to my account and then close it." But she just closed it, and I was like, "Oh, no." But then that's not the end. So she kinda fixes herself up because she's looking a little rough. Her mom helps her, which is really cute. She
Yeah.
has a nice wig. She has a new persona. And she decides to open a new account in the end, not letting this situation destroy her dreams. So she even explains to her mother that if it happens again, she'll destroy that imposter too, and she'll make a new account.
Yeah.
Um, because in the end, the monster was not her choice of career, but it was that it was stolen from her.
Mhm.
This approach is thanks to the writer who had the experience in camming. It really influenced that approach because again,
Yeah.
there was no um, uh, like sadness behind what her job was. It was a sadness about like the
It being
people.
stolen, yeah, and the horrors of what people make, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so Isa Mose had said about the kind of the motivation that she said sex work is work and it's normal. And that's what she wanted people to understand. And much of the
Mhm.
cam experiences came from her own life. The users that we see on screen are inspired by the personality that she saw in her own streams. And after having her own work stolen and put on Pornhub, Mose explained the feeling of alienation, explaining that there was a disembodied version of myself that I was completely alienated from, And that was terrifying. I was seeing this form of myself that was no longer me, but it was me, which
Mhm.
is literally exactly what she was experiencing. And Mazet's goal was to show the normalcy of this line of work as well, that it's normal and that constant criticism because we don't understand it or like regular people don't understand it. And she said, I think what's so frustrating is that sex work is the only career where we demand that it be empowering or we assume that it's exploitative and we don't let it exist in a nuanced space for what it is. We don't demand of a waitress or a programmer or a writer or a retail clerk that their job be empowering. But we also don't assume that there's some sort of victim for having chosen to sell clothes at Forever 21.
Yeah.
Like we completely invalidate their experiences, right? Like
Mhm.
all those other OnlyFans horror stories. Um, the writer's experience outside of camming in simply trying to pitch the script was equally alarming and horrifying. So, in this article on Daily Dot, which is where I found all these quotes, titled Netflix thriller Cam explores the fractured nature of online identity, they explain assumptions about sex work followed Mazet when she tried to pitch the script with Goldhaber. Executives grilled her about the craziest sexual acts she's ever had to perform, and others weren't sure why she had to be involved. One guy rewrote the end of the script to include him and Mazet in a demented kind of fan fiction. He saw it as a joke, while she saw it as sexual harassment. So that's
Yeah.
like, we literally see that with the cop. Like, I'm coming
Yeah.
here for me, real life, like, not my persona, me, human being, asking you for help to do your job. And you're asking me like something that's not even related to that other job.
Yeah.
Or also seeing like that blur of like her as a person instead only seeing her as a sex object that we like now I can write myself into the narrative because it's hilarious. And it's like you want to do that to anybody else. Right?
Yeah.
Like
It's super
in what
gross.
world would you write like an email? Let me show you this fan fiction I wrote about us. HR is gonna know.
Yeah.
But because she had previously done sex work, they're like, then she's not gonna mind it. She's
Mhm.
already like allowed that to happen to her. So now everything else is deserved. Um,
Yeah.
and then in the end,
Gross.
the yeah, the film is incredibly realistic despite the paranormal deepfake fiend. There is a gore, and it is certainly a horror film, but the real scares come from the sense of stolen identity, personal space, and disrespect by the world. It is a complex story that will get under the skin of any content creator whose very being is their selling point, their identity, the service, and their presence online, their livelihood.
Scary.
Yeah.
That's all what I'm gonna say too. It's similar vibes. In that this film just does like such an amazing job portraying, and it's like so crazy that the real person, like the real Mazet, who
Mhm.
actually like experienced the lines, essentially, like those people inspired this gross scene with the police officers. That's just so crazy.
Yeah.
Like they literally say the same words that she says in this little quote. So that's wild.
Yeah. Especially
Um,
because it's like, okay, we can understand that like the commenters and the people in the cam world were inspired by her cam experiences. But then to say like, oh, all the horrors of reality she also experienced, like
yeah.
a never ending. I'm so glad she was able to do it. And, she was able to find success with the same studio that did Get Out, right? Like they understood
Hmm.
the validity of this story. And so thankful that and that she was able to be a part of it for them to be like, why do you have to be here? Like that's so like, are
Because if
you
she
kidding?
wasn't,
That's
then
a
they would
true
have made it.
story.
Yeah. Also, and if she wasn't, they would have bastardized the ending to make it like not the great story that it was.
Yeah.
Because they clearly had their all already preconceived notions of what sex work is,
Yeah.
and were totally fine just devaluing her presence on set.
Yeah.
So,
They would have just been like the same villains. Like it would have just they would have been harming her the way that the fictional villains were harming her.
mhm. Yeah,
Gross.
yeah. Well, I'll say
Let's
words now.
learn more gross.
Yeah, it honestly it kind of is. But one cool thing about my section is thanks to Gabe, they put a bunch of articles in my thing, so my COVID
Gotcha,
brain didn't
Gabe.
have to try too hard. So thank you, Gabe. Um, because there's like a lot of things you can do. Basically, helpful tips that are relevant for cam performers, but honestly, any content creator. making video content. So I have
Mhm.
like a little section of just like things you can do if your content gets stolen. Um, and the thing you said earlier, Gabe, really reminded me of what happened to DMP in that their Instagram got stolen. And like they were not ever able to get that back.
Mhm.
Where it got stolen by like the person trying to sell Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Um, and they had like 600 followers, totally gone. Now we have 86.
Yeah.
So it's like a really real thing where like your platform can get stolen and you may never be able to get it back. You might not
Yeah.
be able to have that. And then now like your livelihood is affected.
Yeah. Well, think about like YouTube, where it's all dependent on the amount of viewers and clicks, right? There's a channel that Mike watched, VFX Artists React. I forget what their channel's
Mhm.
called, but they've had like years of content. They make so much money. They're amazing creators. And one day they woke up, all of their stuff was gone. Like someone
Yeah.
went in and deleted years of their content. And
Yeah.
it's just like, that's like the absolute worst nightmare that could happen to a content creator happened to
Yeah.
them.
And also just like not feeling ownership over your own content. I know right now there's a lot of drama happening with like Dungeons and Dragons related
Mhm.
to that. In that there's like this new plan from Wizards of the Coast to like do this open content platform thing. And it's
Mhm.
essentially making it that any content that's ever been made by like creatives in the D&D space that like they can now commodify those resources
Mhm.
and they no longer belong to the content creators
Yeah.
themselves. And we don't know if it'll go through or if it'll change, but I
Yeah.
know that that's like another thing where it's like content creation as it's become like a livelihood and a job for a lot of people. It has in recent years been getting a lot of scary stuff happening to it in that like there's so many unknowns around copyright. There's so many different things that really like impact the work, and you can have your stuff stolen. As you said, you can have someone go into your steal your account and delete all
Mhm.
of your work. Like there's
Mhm.
so much risk associated with the job that is
Yeah.
genuinely scarier than the supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
um,
Like, how do you confirm that it's, like, your content? And also, how do you know how much is your content? Like, if you are a video game streamer, right? Like, the
mhm,
core content is this video game, but you are the content.
mhm.
Like, you're the one who's talking about it. So, ugh,
Yeah, a lot of
it's
it ties back to like
stressful.
you're the personality that's like making
Mhm.
this content go far. But
Like,
yeah,
you're
so
welcome.
no, exactly. It's like really well. So a scary thing, it is a very scary thing to have your platform, hard work, and a piece of your identity stolen and exploited. Cam does a fantastic job highlighting this and how stressful that experience would be, as well as just how invasive it is. I still like the one scene where they like go into her actual room like still haunts me. Like there's just so much
So upsetting.
genuine stress that takes place and it's all very reminiscent of very real things. Like if we think of doxing, uh
Mhm.
having your identity stolen, actually deep fake technology, like all this stuff. It's there's something very personal about putting your face at the forefront of your brand. And with that
Mhm.
comes this like inherent danger. That even if someone does not know your name, they would recognize you in public, have access to your personal time, space, and identity. And this film does an amazing job of showcasing just how vulnerable that could be, especially if that content that you're creating is something that society demonizes or just does not
Mhm.
understand. And this is something that content creators and folks that work in the sex industry can both experience. It's something artists and creatives can experience. And all of it ties back to the commodification of any and everything we have and how capitalism preys on all the things that make us great.
Yeah. Gross.
And yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a way that capitalism influences how we see others as well as like things that we consume that gives this feeling of entitlement to the consumer over what they are consuming. So when you end up commodifying a person, the people consuming the content from that person are more likely to feel entitlement over that person. And that
Like
there's
that
lots of
guy.
yeah, lots of danger associated with that. And essentially, that entitlement can make one, the creator themselves feel very unsafe. They can actively put their lives, their identities, their safety at risk.
Mhm.
So, for this reason, there's a big risk in taking on a job that has your face or body attached to it, especially when an industry that's so heavily stigmatized. Many people who work as creators within the sex industry are at risk for violence from people who think that what they are doing is wrong or feel entitled to them. And that risk can be worth it when the reward is like financial stability and growth that are attached to it, especially when living in a society where wealth is a direct pathway to a higher quality of life, not only for yourself, but those you care about. But it's also like when that positive piece of it, in addition to like your autonomy and your like happiness within that space, are stolen, it makes dealing with it, in addition to like this mental trauma of having like your consent taken away through this exploitation of your privacy, it makes it like not worth it in the sense that your physical safety is now put at risk. And there's this added layer when thinking of theft through piracy, exploitation from big companies. So thinking of like even cam sites that take a cut of like the performer's check.
Yeah,
And then
she
like,
says that too.
yeah, and like aren't there to defend her when things go wrong, but they're still actively receiving money and benefiting over her exploitation, essentially, because like her identity has been stolen. And then AI or identity theft. The theft of content creators' work is so damaging because it attacks not only their livelihood, but their identity itself, like their personal image, their name. And as a result, like if their actual name is put out, sometimes that can impact their families, especially when society doesn't think like good things about the career. There's lots of stigma around like content creation in general, but especially around sex work. So it's a different kind of theft when you're stealing from big business, but this isn't that kind of theft. It's the kind of a theft that directly impacts individual people and their ability to survive. I titled this part of my section Helpful Tips That Are Relevant for Cam Performers and honestly any content creator making video content. As I said, Gabe found an article on the ways to combat theft within this industry titled Adult Models, How to Fight Piracy and Stolen Content. So hopefully this information is helpful to you or someone you know. So there are a handful of ways that cam performers can protect themselves when creating accounts. And some of these protections are able to be opted into in cam sites themselves. So there's some cam sites that are better than others. One method of protecting your content is through the DMCA, also known as the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is a federal law that protects the intellectual property rights of a creator. A DMCA complaint is a notice that's sent to the infringing party or a third party playing a role in the infringement. And the DMCA is the first tool in an anti-piracy arsenal. But there are some important things to know and a right way of how to do it. So this website kind of goes into like all the details. It also lists like some sites specifically that offer those protections within the actual cam sites. So sites like BongaCam offer DMCA protections on their site and offer even extended protections for when you have to submit requests to Google or other hosts that have pirated content. So if
they help you.
Yeah, they actually like help you submit claims that your stuff has been stolen and put on other websites without your consent.
That's rad.
That seems like the one based on this article that it links to that has the most going on. BongaCam seems like the one that has the most protections available, but there are other ones that offer similar protections, just not at the same extent. BongaCam is the only one that also offers Google and web host DMCA requests. But other ones like Cam with Her, Chatterbait, Chatterbait. I don't know how to say words.
It's okay.
My Free Cams and Voyeur also offer some protection for creators in that they do offer the DMCA request, just not through Google or the web hosts. Submitting to Google apparently doesn't remove the content from the internet, but it does keep it from being associated with your name, in that like it will impact that it doesn't show up in like your searches. So if someone's looking for you, they'll no longer get links to that other place. But it doesn't remove it from the internet. It's more the web host one that will actually work to take it down from these other sites because the entire thing is that they're hosting it on their website without consent. The article also goes on to recommend watermarking all content that you create, specifically as just like a good practice for all content creators, because it's something that can protect you, especially if you copyright your watermark. It's just like an additional thing to say, this is actually mine, not yours. So yeah, watermarking your content is a good practice to begin with. It works as a form of promotion and makes it easier to identify your content. Trademarking your watermark is an easy way to provide additional protection, as trademarks hold more legal weight than DMCA alone. Webmasters and companies are more likely to respond to trademark violations, as it is a harsher fine in court. And it's also possible to file foreign trademarks and gain a legal foothold in countries that don't recognize DMCA. So not all countries recognize DMCA. So this is kind of like a secondary protection to making sure that your content is yours. And especially internationally, there's lots of countries that don't operate within the same copyright laws. So this is an additional protection that may protect you abroad versus just in the United States.
I just want to say we watermark all our stuff. It's right there in the corner.
Exactly. So look at us be good. I did a little dance because I was happy about that. I was like, look at us be good. I was like wondering if we did.
Yeah.
So it's positive. So having your content watermarked is just a great way to legally protect yourself and your content. You can also apparently fight piracy through better marketing, which is another thing that I was like, what? But essentially through marketing yourself, it is a way to make sure that you're at the top of searches, algorithms, etc., and that the pirated content gains less traction. So one thing that they said is like make a website, make all the social media platforms under your name so that they cannot be co-opted by other people, and just make sure like you have as much control over the identity you're trying to have out there on these sites. So like if it's not your name, that you have claim to all the places that it could exist elsewhere, so that like you're kind of protecting someone making an Instagram account saying it's you and then putting your content on there and then you not being able to fight it because it looks like it's you. You know what I mean? And one last piece of info that seemed important and helpful is that they say that copyright isn't the only law that pirates are non-compliant with. All pirates are also non-compliant with the 2257 record keeping requirements. This is a federal offense and a big deal in the United States specifically. It's also a big deal in a number of other countries as well. Being able to stack the 2257 compliance on top of copyright infringement gives more legal ammunition, essentially, sometimes in jurisdictions where copyright isn't as big of a deal. So it's just another tool within your arsenal to get legal protections, especially like thinking about how in Cam they weren't able to get help from the police. The way that you would be able to get help in a lot of instances is through these copyright related laws. You'd be able to sue, you'd be able to make traction because you have these protections in place, and you'd be able to get these videos taken down.
The 2257 record keeping requirements, like that's what she tried to do too, because it's like when she takes pictures of herself next to her ID, like and has like the time. You do that with Instagram too if you get your account stolen, but even then it was like denied because like your account's already in file. But yeah, that whole practice of her showing that she's a real person and having that.
Yeah. Well, that sucks that it wasn't able to work in the movie. But it did say that it is a good practice to follow.
It should have worked if it wasn't a paranormal situation.
Yeah. Okay. Very valid. Very valid. Yes. Okay. So if you don't have a paranormal situation, it should protect you. And the article kind of continues on. There's other things that you can do, but I just kind of felt like those were the most helpful of the things listed. But I highly recommend the article just if that's something you're experiencing. As we said, like it's not going to work all the time. But the more tools you have in your tool chest, the more likely you're going to be able to combat these things and get like financial retribution, even like because there's fines that these companies have to pay if they've stolen your stuff. So
and they hate paying money.
They hate paying money, so you really got to come for their wallets. So the more stuff you have protecting your content, the better. There's another instance where I know there's like TikTok sounds. That's something like I read about recently. In that like there's people who will copyright famous TikTok sounds before people like know that they should be doing that. So that like they no longer get the people who like made the sound may not have the actual copyright for it. So they're not able to like market off of it. So that you have to like really, if you're making something, you might not realize it's going to go big or like get viral, but it's you really want to try to like get trademarks, copyrights, stuff like that as much as possible when you're going to end up making a career out of content creation.
Mhm.
The last terrifying thing that I was going to cover, because one, I didn't know,
Mhm.
and it definitely freaked me out a lot, is the deepfake technology and the use of AI. I mean, we saw a little, not deepfake specifically, but like AI and how it does kind of end up being like theft
Mhm.
with this AI art situation. I mean, I'm guilty of participating in the AI art thing. I was
Mhm.
like, this
Me
is
too.
cool. Look how nice I look. It's so cool. And I'm an artist, so it was my bad. I didn't know. But now I do. So I'm not going to do it again. But that was like a big thing where like artists are very outraged by the fact that like I didn't know that they were stealing people's art off of the internet and that's how they were making these things. I was like, cool, they taught robots how to draw. I love that for them.
Mhm.
But that's not what it is. They steal art and then they train the robots to replicate the art, and then that essentially devalues the actual art from the original artist, and that's why it's bad. But deepfake does like a similar thing. It uses AI, and it's a technology that's basically used to take a video and put a different person's face into it.
Mhm.
So the last terrifying thing I learned about is how actually very scary deepfake technology is, specifically when it comes to exploiting someone's identity and their image. If you don't know what a deepfake is, a quick Google search will tell you that deepfake is a video of a person in which their face or body has been digitally altered so that they appear to be someone else, typically used maliciously or to spread false information.
Mhm.
The use of deepfake technologies poses obvious threats to identity protection, and in a country that actively demonizes sex work, it can be life-threatening. In that, I believe the quote, which I'm going to say later, 96% of deepfake videos on the internet are pornographic.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, they do it to
98%,
celebrities and stuff.
yeah. So it's a lot of people who are impacted by this, and they did not willingly choose to go into those fields. So it is like a blatant disregard for their personal autonomy. Um, so yeah, it's could be life threatening. There's like people who have like lost their jobs for people finding out that they've done sex work. So it's a real thing. So in an article titled "Deepfakes, Revenge Porn and the Impact on Women" by Shengxi Wang, they go into detail on some of the threats deepfake technology presents. When looking into the film Cam and the follower Tinkerbot, who is openly a tech person, I feel very strongly that if it's not supernatural, it was him.
Mhm.
In that this deepfake technology, the code for it is open source. So it's very possible that what took place in the movie was his manipulation of deepfake technology to gain different levels of access to the protagonist's life because he felt entitled to her life.
Mhm.
The reason I think this is because apparently deepfake, as I said, is open source. One reason that fuels the rise of deepfake footage is that many implementations of deepfake algorithms are open source, easily accessible to anyone with basic programming skills and a reliable internet connection. The popular code repository created by an anonymous -r- is available on GitHub, free for all to use. And this dramatically lowers the barrier for non-experts to utilize the technology. It also opens the possibility for people to weaponize the technology against people they don't like or their enemies. So even though AI techniques like deepfake have many applications, including photo editing, image repair, 3D transformation, unfortunately, their main application today is generating sexually explicit videos for cyber exploitation. According to Deep Trace Report, 96% of deepfake videos on the internet are pornographic videos. Not surprisingly, the main victims of the fake videos are women whose images and likeness are used without their consent and often without their knowledge. So additionally, there's no the reason this, like, it's already obviously like not a good thing, but the reason it's extra upsetting is because right now, at least I couldn't find any evidence of it, that there's no reliable way to detect whether a deep fake is there, whether or not these videos are real. So in creating these videos without a person's consent, there's no reliable way to disprove that they are not real, which ultimately means that like they can create them all they want with anybody, and then there's no way for that person to be like, that wasn't me, because there's
Mhm.
no way to detect if the deepfake technology is being used. With a combination of things like doxing and deepfake technology, you could really put someone in danger. That's kind of like what I thought of when they did the whole like went into her real room. It was like they were doxing her while under this deepfake technology. Were like pushing barriers and breaking her rules in ways that like she was not consenting to. She did not want
Mhm.
them to show the picture of her brother. She didn't want them to be in her real room. It's like these pushing of barriers to information that is not supposed to be accessible. So there are limitless ways that this technology could be used to harm people. But the main one that I like really don't know if like people thought about that much, but like you could alter court file like evidence. You could change video footage. And
Mhm.
I just don't understand like why that's not more scary to people. Like
Yeah.
it's all like it's just really wild to me that like you could definitely like alter security. Do you know the movie we watched, the really ridiculous one with the river Styx, and they used
Oh,
all the
yeah. It was Unfriended too.
Unfriended 2. That literally could have been deepfake technology. They could
Mhm.
have just used that. Um, within they were all very good programmers. They could have videoed them. That's how they move their faces to make it look like they were doing stuff that they weren't doing.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's just like a lot of implications to like how this technology could be used that are genuinely scary. And I think I did not know that you could change people's voices as well as their face. Like I didn't know you could take any celebrity and put them in any video you wanted them to do. I think that's crazy.
Yeah,
So that's
people
what I
do that
learned.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like a trend where people were doing videos where it was them, but the face was like a celebrity singing a
Hmm.
song or something. And like when you were talking about how you couldn't convince someone it's not a video of you, it just makes me think of when Alice is like talking to her mom because she like keeps being like, "That's not me." And it's like, I have this video. What are you talking about? I know what my kid looks like. And it's just like, no, that's not me. Like,
Yeah.
so hard
There's
to
so many
explain.
implications. Like you could have you could ruin someone's career. Like you could just
Mhm.
go, you could have, especially like considering you could have like any politician, you could have them say the most wild things. Maybe
Mhm.
Kanye is a deep fake. I don't know. Like he's probably not. But like
No.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like there's so many, you could do so much just by
Yeah.
taking someone's face that if that is their career,
Mhm. Well,
you've
there's like
destroyed it now. And there's no way to prove that that wasn't them.
uh-huh.
So you've destroyed it for real. Like there's irreparable damage.
Yeah. Well, you can think about like people who maybe are in vulnerable situations where they're around people who, if they heard or saw a video of them doing something like that, could hurt them, could actually harm
Yeah.
them. Because, like, some religious folks or controlling folks
Yeah. You
could
could use it
definitely
as
do that.
blackmail. You could use
Hmm.
there's so many ways that this technology
Hmm.
could be used for bad.
Yeah. There's also like this conspiracy that I caught wind of people thinking that something like they don't know where Britney Spears is, and there was all these
Mhm.
posts of Britney Spears and, like, these videos, but they're like, "But that's not Britney Spears." Like, they're convinced that they're just showing this other woman to be, like, happy and doing all this stuff, but it might not be her. I don't know.
Oh
I
gosh.
literally just saw, like, a few comments of someone being like, "Look at that," and I'm like, I can't be in this conspiracy. I
I'm not
can't go
gonna lie
down
though,
this."
the technology exists.
It does, and
So it's
unfortunately, it
open
just gave them
source.
so many
Anyone who knows how to
ideas.
code could do it.
Yeah, just give
So
them so many anyone who's listening to this, don't do it.
yeah.
Don't take our ideas. This is the bad stuff we're telling you about.
Yeah, don't do
Um,
those things. Like it's just there's so many implications for it. You could use it in so many different ways. And it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, there's probably ways you could use it for positives, but there's also so many ways you could use it for negatives. And either way, at the end of the day, it's all about taking the consent away from somebody. And that
mhm,
shouldn't be like what you do for funsies.
mhm.
Uh,
Well,
People
it's
should have
like
autonomy over themselves.
when we did those episodes about, like, the AI or computer things that would generate messages from loved ones that you've lost. It's like you could use a deep fake to, like, see their face and recreate that, and, like, even that has a lot of problems because, like, what are they saying? Like, you took their voice away, and they're not even here to defend themselves, like,
Yeah,
fucking
thinking
the
about
Marilyn
exactly
movie.
the character in the movie even that had passed and they were
Yeah.
actively still profiting and exploiting, or I don't know how to say exploiting. Why do I always say exploitating? It's just like a weird thing my
It's
brain
okay.
does. Exploiting her identity past
Mhm.
like and she was not there to defend herself.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
just extra messed up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and imagine, like, her family who are dealing with her loss finding this and it still being
Mhm.
live and having to just be like, "What?" Like,
Yeah.
that's not yeah, that's horrifying, and even, like, I didn't even mention it as part of, like, the horrifying things of the film, but your whole conversation about, like, the commodification, how they feel this ownership, like, the viewers feel ownership over them, especially if they're
Yeah.
paying money. So, like, one of the guys, had a lot of money, and so he was always, like, bouncing around to other girls, and depending on who he was interested in, that's the person who's gonna climb the charts because he could give them money, and so then
Hmm.
he felt like you all belong to me because what I say goes. Like, I am in control of your success. I'm in control of you doing anything. I can make or break you. And so you
Yeah.
have to do what I want. You have to be good to me. You have to like
Because I could destroy
abide by it.
you.
Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
have the power and you are mine. You
Hmm.
belong to me. And that like that was a whole nother horrible thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And one of the articles you shared with me, there was something like that within it too, as well. Just like the fact that you'll have fans in the cam streams who are moderators to make sure your chat doesn't get like
mhm,
inappropriate or upsetting. But and a lot of times the people who like get that trust or like power will
mhm.
feel even more like they'll do so in a way that is uncomfortable and that like they'll cross boundaries or they'll feel like they'll
They're
come at
in.
people with this like I own them so you
Yeah.
can't say that I've removed you from
Uh-huh.
here in like this kind of creepy gross way where it's like they're trying to protect you but the motivation is not positive.
Well, it's like Tinker, because Tinker helped her when she did the fake unaliving. Like he was a part of
Uh-huh.
that. He was the fake guy commenting to get her to bleed. And so he was like, oh, this is us. We're in. We now have this connection. So,
I'm
of
a
course,
part
I
of
can come
this.
see
Yeah.
you in real life. I'm different from them because you let
Hmm.
me in on this like secret.
Yeah.
Ugh, what a great film.
So yeah, ultimately the film does a really great job. It was ahead of its time. It was doing a lot. It really,
Hmm.
and the reason it was such a great film is because they didn't kick her out
Yeah. They let
of
it be
the
honest.
scripting. Yeah,
And like
exactly.
true, yeah. And it's ahead of its time because as they had said, the deep fake, like the hysteria around deep fake, didn't come out until like they were already in post production for the film. Like, so she
Yeah,
had no
so
idea.
they
She was like,
already knew.
"Oh, I predicted like
Yeah,
this
like
is
this
gonna be."
big AI like scare that's very genuine and real. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a real problem like in the future, like as stuff progresses. I feel like there's so many ways that it could be manipulated to do wrong. Um,
But
so
also, it's like you could also have people who could lie, who could say like something really crazy on camera, and then be like, "That's not me. It's a deep fake."
that's also
Like,
very true. Yeah, like there's like conspiracy theory love things. I think the biggest thing will be like creating a technology that can identify it, and I think that'll solve a lot of the things. Where like they've have created technology that can detect if an AI wrote a paper.
mhm,
That's a thing. There's like little things that are being developed to like detect these things, but until those things are solid, there's
mhm.
probably going to be like this weird middle space where pretty wild stuff happens, and people are like, eh.
I don't think when we first got like Photoshop, people like
Yeah,
didn't understand how you could do that. Or like the ghost photos we covered in like our ghost episode
yeah.
of like people who are like, ghosts are real. And it's like someone just did some double exposure.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, it's super real. It's like till you understand. And I guess also like another danger that I really think about is the fact that like people won't always like check their research, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. Like they'll
Mm-hmm.
see something and be like, that's true. So there's gonna be a lot of people who like make up their minds about things, even if they're real or not. And that's just the unfortunate reality of humanity. So they could
Mm-hmm.
see it, it isn't real, but now that's just what they think now. Kind of like
Yeah.
tweets where you have like the fake
People
tweets.
oh yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah. Like, unfortunately, our Doja Cat tweet from our unfriended episode, she did not say those things.
oh no,
The
that would have been
commenter
so
told us
funny.
that, and I was like, "Oh, dang, got
That would have
us,
been so funny.
got us."
Well, I wish that one was real because that's
Me
hilarious.
too.
See,
Yeah,
it's hard to tell. Even us media analysis people sometimes even mess up too.
we just wanted it to be too real, too
Yeah.
hard. I mean, yeah, people love conspiracy theories, no matter how absurd. Like, there's conspiracy theories that John Benet Ramsey, uh, the young beauty queen who was murdered
Okay.
is actually Katy Perry. There's like people are gonna believe, like they're gonna you tell them something crazy. People think Avril Lavigne died a long time ago, and this is a new person walking around pretending to be Avril.
Yeah.
Same thing with Paul McCartney. Like, like people
Or like the
people can believe what they want.
Berenstain
Yes,
Bears.
Mandela
Yeah,
effect.
there's a lot. There's a lot of things.
Yeah,
What is reality ultimately at the end of the day?
it's our interpretation of it. And
And people are going to
anyway,
make up their minds, but hopefully the people who are making up their minds aren't the ones who have like the power to murder people, so
mhm,
or ruin their lives.
yeah. So I think we have a lot of soapboxes to be on because there's a lot that's covered. It's very complex. I think at the
Yeah.
heart, the theme and the message of this episode and this film is that sex work is real work and
Hell yeah.
deserving of respect. And you got to cut content creators some slack, and you got to help them. You got to understand that like their content is just as valuable, and don't steal it. Don't pay for the stuff. Okay, pay for an OnlyFans.
Yeah. Get it from the source,
Support them so they can keep doing it. Especially if you like someone, you're like, I like the way you do that. Amazing. Support
Yeah.
them, but also know they are professional.
Yeah, they're
Whatever you
not
do.
like your best
They're not for
friend
you.
or
They
your
don't know you.
partner. Like
They don't want you.
they don't know you like that. You're paying for
Yeah.
a service.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I just had that conversation with my partner. It was like, if you had OnlyFans, would I have to pay for it? And I was like, yeah. Like, you get other stuff for free,
But
but if
this
you're gonna get
version
my
is
OnlyFans, you gotta pay for it.
yeah, this is a
You're paying for a service like everybody else.
yeah.
Okay, like
That's
I don't.
super
What
real.
is this?
Yeah, it's a different version of you, so obviously.
Yeah, you gotta pay for her. Somebody else. I do not have one.
Yeah.
Again, it'd be really hard to create content so regularly. I'm just like in
Yeah.
awe of them.
Yeah, we already have like one whole podcast and YouTube show. It would just be a
Yeah.
lot to like add additional. You already do like 20 jobs,
I
Gabe.
do so
So
many jobs. I couldn't add that job as lucrative as it could be. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll just complete envy to anyone in the sex worker field and content creating field. Like,
Yeah.
y'all
It's
are
a lot of work.
amazing.
Nothing but respect.
Good job. Definitely go watch the film. Let us know what you think of the film. We have 2 more episodes left of our New Year, New Me. I hope you enjoy them. They're pretty
It's
fun.
true.
Then we'll start a new series in February. And yeah, I think it was a good kickoff to the new year, revisiting some stuff, treading new ground, seeing how it's going. Pretty fun.
Yeah. I agree. Good stuff.
Yeah. Like and subscribe, support these content creaters.
Yeah.
So we can keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And make sure you check out our watermark up at the top.
Yeah, because that makes it real.
This belongs to us.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, to get married.
Lead your kids.
Okay, bye.